Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Monday night live broadcast. We are broadcasting on Facebook, on Periscope, and on YouTube Live. So across all the platforms that we could possibly get our greedy little hands on. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dynasty. I am one half of La Maison de Rouge. My other half, Lucy Sweetkill, is doing something tonight. Hi, Shermie. Hi. Hi, Bobcat. So tonight we have the elegant and ethereal Domina Colette. And just as an introduction, Colette is an educatrix. She is a professional dominatrix where she has been practicing the art of intimacy and power exchange for over 15 years. Domina Colette holds a PhD in education from UC Berkeley, where her research focuses on misconceptions and conceptual change. She's a dream, intimacy, and power mentor, where she coaches men, women, and all folks to cultivate their personal power and find their unique path to realizing their wildest dreams. She also teaches women how to channel their inner Domme at Powerplay Bootcamp and Renew Breakup Bootcamp. Colette is the creatrix of Pervette.com, an intimate space where you can choose your own erotic adventure and go down the rabbit hole of exploring your innermost desire. And here is Domina Colette. Hello, Domina Colette.
Hi.
Hi. We have quite an audience here already, and it's so good to have you, and it's so wonderful to see your veiled face. I'm one of the few people that has the privilege of knowing what that beautiful face looks like. And so I really look forward to our conversation tonight.
Me too.
And having you share your story, and then branching out into our dreams, our visions,
Yes.
our fulfilling our life purpose, talking about magic and just power.
That sounds so good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Delighted to be here.
Wonderful. So to start off this evening's interview, I think it would be nice to kind of pinpoint your origin and maybe what was your first kinky experience as a child without actually knowing it was a kinky experience.
Oh, wow. Okay. I would say that must be when I was 3. And let me try to paint the picture. I was 3 years old. This was like right after my parents got a divorce. And so it was my mom, my sister. We were living together, and I had a lot of time to myself. And, sometimes my sister played with me and sometimes not. And so I just felt like I was by myself a lot. And I also had this obsession with my blanket at the time. I loved sniffing it. It was like my best friend. And the one day I just put my blanket in between my legs, crossed my ankles, flexed my thighs. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? This feels so good. What is this? And I can't describe it other than it just felt really good in between my legs and my pussy. And I just continued doing this. And then I rolled myself into like a burrito into my blanket or egg roll and just started, flexing my thighs and crossing my ankles. And it just felt so good. I didn't realize that I discovered masturbation at the age of 3. And then I would do this every day for hours until I was just like, came unrolling out of my egg roll all sweaty. But every time I did, I was also having these really vivid fantasies. And the fantasies I had were like of this world that was the opposite of the world I was in. It was the one where I was this like dark, mysterious girl with like superpowers. She's somehow on like, she hangs out the edge of the playground, and everyone is kind of drawn towards her like mysteriousness, and she had this strange like aura to her. She had like a pet crow lands on her shoulder, and yeah, people just were drawn towards her. Boys wanted to play with her, and she was fun, loving, and adventurous. And yeah, I just had these weird fantasies that were of this woman or this girl that had like really awesome superpowers, and everyone wanted to play with her. And that fantasy kind of continued for a long while, years and years. And I fast forward like, 30 or no, 20 something years later, at the age of 23, I took on this job as this woman who has some mysterious power. Boys, men come to her and want to play with her. And yeah, but I think the kinkiness was always there as well. I think I was always like, I found things like on like Chinese soap operas and like shows and films there that kind of just like triggered something in me. Like, a bondage scene or somebody getting tickled. I remember like just a scene from a film can like be imprinted into my mind, and I would like create this like really kinky storyline that involved usually a woman being like bound or humiliated or in some kind of compromising position. And I never had fantasies of like dominating men, I don't think, until I became a dom. And so, yeah, I think that's where the origin started.
Okay. So you're the center point of a lot of your fantasies were this character that eventually you came to embody.
Yeah.
Okay. And she was mysterious but desirable and
Loving and
yeah.
fun and yeah, adventurous. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's like she kind of embraced a lot of paradox about her.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, that sounds like a dominatrix, actually.
Isn't that so strange? I mean, when I look back and I was like, oh, I was having fantasies of being a dominatrix before I even knew what a dominatrix was.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something so powerful about our fantasies. Our fantasies are prophecies.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the fantasies that we have as a child. I think those are like the purest visions of who we can be and where we should be. Mm-hmm. And there's something really powerful about remembering those fantasies that you have as a child, because they become the guiding light.
Yeah.
Of how you make your choices, how you intuit where you should be, what you should be doing. And, I don't know, if I didn't have those fantasies, I don't think I would have arrived at the point in my life where I decided to become a dom. Like, there was just something compelling about the archetype, the imagery of a woman who has power because people willingly give their power to her.
Yeah. I love that she had a pet raven.
Yeah, that's right. It was more a raven, not a crow. Yeah.
Oh,
like
I'm
that.
sorry.
No, raven.
Okay.
Yeah, I like raven better.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also,
Yeah.
also, I love that, that you kind of connected to a childhood memory and a childhood fantasy, because you're right, absolutely right about the purity of those fantasies being like who we really were before the world kind of like caused us to be other ways.
Before the socialized mind, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Before the programming and the conditioning, all the societal pressures and expectations. And so I think that you're actually helping me to remember some of my own fantasies as a child.
Ooh, I want to hear some.
Well, there was definitely the kind of like that figure, the woman, the mysterious woman,
Yeah.
and she embraced paradox, and
Mm-hmm.
she had power, but she was also magnetic.
Yes.
And she
Yep.
wasn't like evil or cruel, but like she could come across, she could do, like, she
Yeah.
had that darkness that
Yep.
she was that was easy to draw from,
Yeah. Wow, this is so interesting. I feel like we both had that same fantasy and the same. I wonder if this dominatrix archetype is so powerful that it's actually embedded in so many of our consciousness or unconsciousness. And
Yeah.
like, it feels very Jungian, this idea of the archetypes that we all have and have the ability to embody.
Yeah.
And I love that we followed that vision and followed that fantasy. And like how I love thinking about like how many Doms had that same fantasy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we all had that same fantasy and this is how it manifested itself. And maybe we're all drawn, we're all connected here by our dreams. Like I'm connected to you by your dream. And maybe there's something really powerful about sharing these dreams that we have. And we realize, oh, we were meant to be here. We were meant to connect. We were meant to do something powerful together. And
Yeah.
it all started with this collective unconscious archetype that was embedded in our hearts
Yeah.
and soul.
And when we were meant to remember, who maybe we were,
Mm-hmm.
and in a past life, or
Yeah.
who we wanted to be in a certain way, when we didn't know any better. And
Yeah.
I think that is really powerful. And I see kind of like the trajectory of, I guess the larger framework of life, currently, like that there is a need for this type of woman,
Yeah.
because for the longest time, there were, so many oppressing forces that wanted to contain her and wanted to tame her and wanted to,
Yes.
make her into something docile and,
Yeah.
domesticate her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, you're absolutely right that we do need a new symbol for power.
Mhm.
And I think that symbol is is one that is feminine and wild and powerful and free.
Yes.
And
Yeah. And can inspiring
yeah,
for other women and men to also connect with their deepest selves, maybe when they were more pure before all the social conditioning and,
yeah.
everything else.
And I
Um,
love that word, inspiring, right? I think that power is inspiring. Like the new power that I feel like we are shaping right now into our future is the one that creates change through inspiration and not
mhm,
through force.
mhm,
And I think that that's what's so beautiful about the divine feminine power.
mhm. Yeah, it's like giving that space and giving that energy instead of like punishing you for not being that.
Right. Yeah.
So just to get back onto the chronological, um, storyline, how did you actually get into being a professional dominatrix?
Um, well, that started 16 years ago.
Mhm.
2005, I moved up from LA to the Bay Area to attend grad school at Berkeley. And it was my first year as a grad student. And I had two friends who started working at this house of domination called The Gates. And I remember one day I was having soup with one of my friends and at this place called Smart Alex. And she was telling me about her day at work at the Gates. And I was like, so what'd you do? She was like, well, I had a session. I tied a guy up. I tortured his cock and balls. I pissed on him and I used a strap on him. And I was just like, what? This is a story that she can tell? That's incredible. I want to be able to tell stories like that. And she paid for our soup with like $100 bill. And she's like, this is the problem I'm having now as a Dom. Like I have to break hundreds in places. And I was like, okay, I want to tell stories like that. And I want to have problems like that of breaking $100 bills. And so I went in for an interview at the Gates and I kind of maybe fabricated a story that, yeah, I practiced kink in my personal life, but I actually didn't. And so I started shadowing and then eventually started taking sessions. And I think at first I just didn't quite understand why men would come to a woman and pay her to do these degrading, demeaning things. It didn't make, like, I couldn't compute why. And then I got it. I completely understood why one would do that. It's just like, even though I've had fantasies of, like, you know, maybe being submissive, or usually these fantasies I had always involved women being submissive, right? But never one of men. And I think it was because it was never introduced into my world, into my purview at all. And so that never, never just, I never had that thought of how that could be. And then when I started sessioning, I was like, oh, I get it. This is just like my own fantasies of surrendering and letting go. And I realized that the people who come to see a Dom are just incredibly beautiful, sweet, curious, kinky, playful people. And they are, just wonderful people to become friends with. And I think that's how I've come to really just love this work. All the beautiful relationships and friendships that I've developed with connecting with really like-minded, curious seekers.
Yeah, that's where the richness is the relationships and the diversity
Oh my
in
God.
people. Can I ask you at what point, or if there was like a turning point, or like a more just out of practice that you came to understand the more psychological element of dominant and submission?
I felt like there was definitely, I think there was a turning point. I would say it was probably around like 7 years ago. I think like the first like 10 years of being a Dom, I was just like, I just sessioned a ton. I was like deep in the practice. I put in the hours. I got like the mechanics of it and how to and do all the things, right? But then I think it wasn't until I started my own personal journey of seeking and telling my truth did I really come to contemplate the theory behind the practice of kink, and really ask the question of why are we drawn towards this? And I think that, and I think it was like kind of this like parallel play of being on the spiritual journey and also being in the dungeon, did I start to kind of like connect the dots between the two. And I started to realize that BDSM is just this highly densely symbolic act. It's this practice that is teaching you how to live and how to love. It's all the keys and codes of life and the ancient esoteric wisdom out there. Like when I come across like Buddhism, Taoism, Kabbalah, I see all the teachings and I'm like, wait, that's what we're doing inside the dungeon. Mm-hmm. This is what we're practicing. And we're practicing it not just with our minds, but on every single aspect of ourselves, the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual, the sexual, it's tapping into every part of ourselves, the practice of learning how to let go, how to surrender, how to trust someone, how to trust the universe, and how to transcend all of these dualities and find our center and our balance and our power and our bliss in that moment of fully being present.
Yeah, I totally relate to this kind of like expansion and compression of these ideas.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, because I have my own answer for this. Is it challenging for you to, like, you're talking about something relatively philosophical in what people are seeking when they submit, right?
Yeah.
And it's very condensed and compressed when you do a session. It's like maybe 2-3 hours of out of life, regardless of how regular it is for them, and then for people who maybe aren't doing sessions in this specific way, like for example, for me, when I'm in life, I am still looking to kind of play in this way with life in general,
Right.
not in the compressed form of like 2 or 3 hours in a session. So is it challenging for you to kind of orchestrate something like this for somebody else within such a compressed amount of time?
Is it challenging? No, I think like maybe just doing it for so long, it just becomes this like intuitive practice, right? It feels like a dance. And I tend to not think about what I'm going to do when I go into session with someone. Sometimes I have a vision, and it's just like, an image of like where we might end up. But it's just really this dance in the present moment with someone. It feels like we're both constantly tuning into each other's energy, and I'm seeing how they respond to my actions, my touch, my speech. And it's just taking their hand and leading them onto this journey of into the unknown, where even I love that it's the unknown for me as well. And that's why I love how I don't plan anything. And it's just like, what do I feel? What am I feeling, what they're feeling? And I just allow that to keep unfolding and to allow us to keep on going deeper and deeper and getting more and more intimate. And I feel like it feels kind of just like you're, as you're saying, it's like this compressed space and time. But I think it's this compression that feels like a microcosm of life as well, right? And it's a practice of how we navigate and move through life. And it's this bit of not knowing and just kind of taking this step forward with like faith and trust. And so, as I just try to do my best to really feel into where they're at and how I could be a guide to pushing them to their limits and boundaries, so that they could see how limitless they are and how they could be anyone and anything and nothing.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think that that's one of the loftiest goals is kind of like ego annihilation.
Yeah.
And for some people maybe who aren't seeking a spiritual experience, how do you navigate a session or an experience with them?
Yeah, I think it's, even though they may not be seeking the spiritual experience, I feel like my whole like reality is just like, so I see things through this spiritual lens that I think it's just intuition again, like just following my intuition of where I think where their desires are and how to bring them to the place where they are realizing their innermost desires with me. And I think how I navigate that is really just getting to know them, getting really intimate with them, having the discussions with them about their dreams and their desires, how they're feeling in this moment as they're stepping into this dungeon. What are they ready for? And just kind of really getting the clear sense of where they're at right now, where I think they want to be taken. And then I just kind of intuit this map forward. And it's one where we're just playing our way.
It sounds very magical. And I'm wondering if you have any sort of like parallels with kind of like your own spiritual practices, and then a session, like kind of maybe rituals or the way that you're talking about intuiting the work.
Yeah. The parallels between the spiritual practice and the sessions, or I think it's I think that there's a lot of ritual involved with BDSM, and there's something beautiful and safe and comforting about the rituals that I create with my subs. And I think that that's something that feels very that feels like there's a parallel, and that we develop these rituals, and every time we do it again, it feels like a prayer to each other and to this unknown space of playing in that. And
That's so beautiful.
yeah,
That
and
is
I think
fair.
and I think that I think about like when I take on the role of the Dom in the dungeon, I think about the Dom as being the symbol of the universe. And I think that there's something really powerful that happens when someone trusts the universe and allows the universe to deliver what they think they need in that moment so that they could be at the cutting edge of their evolution. And there's just this, I think there's this desire for myself to want to facilitate this trust that they have, and to trust, to surrender, to let go, to fall deeply into the space that that allows for them to forget who they are and who they can be.
Yes, that is definitely one of the most rewarding experiences, when somebody does completely trust, and there isn't necessarily like a script or a demand for a certain thing at the end or during the time together.
Yeah.
When I feel most like you said, like we are kind of this momentary embodiment of the universe to them during
Yeah.
this experience, and that we can bring to them what they need. Like we can intuit that because we become a channel.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that way that you speak about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think like, it's that there's so many parallels. I think as I was going through this like deep inward journey over the past couple of years, as I'm experiencing, the heights of like soulmate love, and like the depth of like pain and suffering from losing a loved one. Like I just started seeing like all the things that I've been doing and practicing and hopefully inspiring others to do is what I ought to be doing myself, which is just trusting the universe when things come up and you did not plan for, right? And to just like do the things that we've been doing in all of this time in the dungeon, right? We keep on sharing ourselves and getting intimate and sharing our feelings and our desires and our boundaries, and trusting that we are guided and supported, even though we feel like we are pushed to our limits and we are at our breaking point, and that we're being tortured by the reality we cannot control. That even in those moments, you can find your bliss. And it's when you let go of the idea of this is how it should be, or what would they think. When you let go of all of those thoughts and you just feel into it, you really see that you are always supported.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful, and to remember, that what we provide for our subs, we have to also provide for ourselves.
Yeah.
And you're talking about losing a loved one, and I'm sure that there's grief associated with that. And how, how did you how did you use BDSM to deal with the grief, to navigate through the grief?
Yeah. And yeah, just to give you or the audience a little bit of context, it was May of last year when my dad took his life, and completely unexpected.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry to hear that.
And yeah, it was the most painful experience. And the grieving and the suffering was, it was just really, really, it was challenging. And I think that how I kind of connected it back to everything that I've been doing in this work is that I reminded myself that this pain that I'm feeling is really the truth. And I want the truth. And I want the truth that I did not see before, and I did not know before. And I did not see the truth of where my dad was at, where his reality was. I had no idea of that truth until that moment happened, his final wish, his final choice. And I was hit with the reality, the painful truth of what it is, of what our relationship was, of how I wasn't fully present to his experience, and how I wasn't fully there for him, or I couldn't see what he didn't communicate. And so I think for me, it was just remembering that even this pain is, I accept this pain because I accept this truth. I accept this reality.
Mm-hmm.
And this truth is bringing me closer to what all of this is, what this reality is. And I want to know that truth because that gives me power to know exactly how to make choices from now on, and to see life and reality in a different way. Now I'm like, I think I used to think before my dad's passing, like a life filled with adventures is the life worth living. And I think that what I realized is a life worth living is the one with no regrets. And the life of no regrets is the one where at every moment you show up and you show and you give as much love as you can to those that you love. And that's how you live a life with no regrets.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that that painful truth has taught me so much, has taught me how to grow, and taught me how to connect in such a deep way with my family that I never had before. And I even see the blessing in my dad's passing, in that I have grown so close with my mom and my sister since then. And like every wound that there might have been between my sister and I years ago when she outed me is completely healed. And we are so deeply connected. We are having the most deepest, real conversations that we've ever had. And we wouldn't have had that without my father.
Yeah.
My father's final choice.
Yeah. That's so beautiful that that you can turn things around, and not be consumed by the grief, but to really take it in and let it transform you. I think that grief, losing a loved one, changes us forever, and how it changes us is up to us. It's not
Right.
just some like chemical reaction and all of a sudden you're something else. And there's no guarantee that you're going to come out of this grief, or that you're going to be able to handle this grief, and be able to see the best thing that could have come out of it. But like being able to take it in and surrender to it fully, and let it be a part of you, and then start acting upon like what that new being is, which is, for you, it was connecting with your family on a deeper level and becoming closer. That's just like, I think, the best possible outcome. And you had mentioned that your that your sister outed you. Was there like a reconciliation in, or what happened with that?
Yeah. It was 7 years ago. Yeah, 7 years ago when my sister outed me. And up until that point, I, been a Dom for a decade and thought I could take this secret to the grave, to my mom's grave and my parents' grave, actually. I was just like, oh, they don't need to know. They won't understand that. They won't get this thing. And it's not their idea of the American dream they had for their daughter. And my sister, she outed me to my mom. And it was, for me at that point, like the most devastating thing that anyone could have done, especially my sister. And just to see my mom be completely like broken by that truth, to know that her daughter is a sex worker and could possibly get arrested or assaulted, or all these things that my sister kind of planted into her mind of what could happen. And at the time, I just so resented my sister for doing that. And she said it was for my own good. She wanted me to quit. My whole family wanted me to quit doing what I was doing. And for me, that was the moment of, this reckoning with truth. And pain is where, talking about pain and truth. And before, I always hid from that painful truth of, I don't want to hurt my mom. I want to protect her. And so I didn't realize that by doing that, I was taking away my own power. And I was afraid of the truth and telling this truth. And now I could look back on it, and now I mean, I could thank my sister for outing me, because the moment that she did, it was like, you can't undo that. Like, I can't lie about that to my mom. I couldn't like fabricate. I tried, but I was just like, no, there's no way. And I had to make a choice. I had to either quit my job, make my family happy, or continue doing what I do. And they might not be happy, but I just had this faith that I will continue doing what I do because it makes me so happy, and that I will make it my job and my mission to spread this word, to not to propel the misconceptions about sex work and BDSM, because that's what I was doing before that. By not showing up, by not telling people what I do, by like living this double life, I was propelling these misconceptions. And to show up and say, yes, I'm a Dom, to anyone who asks what I do, even Uber drivers and like plumbers, like they know. And they're like, I've never met a Dom. Can you tell me what you do? And just that bit of like speaking your truth and being in your truth and dispelling these misconceptions and creating a more real, true reality, that's power. And that, I believe that my sister helped me start this journey of like being a more truthful person, a person who could step into their truth. And so, yeah, I thank her to this day for outing me. But I've addressed the fact that the betrayal was really painful and all of that. And we've had those conversations since my dad's passing, and we've really patched everything up.
Wow.
But I think there's something here. I keep on thinking about like what power is. And I think that in my own journey of coming into my power, it's coming into my truth. And it's about seeking and telling the truth. And, when we think about like the S&M part of BDSM, sadomasochism, I think that we should all be practicing being sadists and masochists, and not with like the typical tools that we think of, like a whip or a paddle, but it's truth. Truth is the tool.
Yeah.
Truth is the tool that can be painful for us to give and receive, and we avoid that so much, and that's why we have affairs or lie and omit things. But it's when we can begin the practice of receiving and giving this truth, this pain, that's the practice of coming into our power.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in every way. And it's just, again, so beautiful and so moving that you were able to say thank you to your sister, who basically kind of betrayed you in a way, like she betrayed your trust and she hurt you, and it caused a lot of pain throughout the whole family.
Right.
And to say thank you for liberating me, because when we are not living in our truth, we're holding on to like basically like books of lies, books that have these stories that we've written for ourselves and other people, like the fact that you thought you had to protect your mom and that she couldn't handle the truth. Right. So that was maybe some kind of a story that was crafted around maybe her projected, like her perceived fragility or something.
Right.
And and I think that, when we are liberated and when we can step into our own truth, we give everybody else permission to do the same for themselves. And granted, I don't know what the reason was that your sister outed you. I wonder if she did come from a very pure place or if she was coming from a place of fear. But hopefully your ability to turn it around and say thank you instead of I hate you forever allowed her to also see that maybe she had some truths that she wasn't facing up to. And hopefully, she was able to also liberate herself in by being inspired by how you were able to turn it around for yourself. And I think like the power that you're talking about in being honest and truthful in our most authentic selves is something that society has been crafted to take away from us incrementally. As we move through society, as in this culture, and maybe other cultures as well, but specifically in the American culture, which is mostly what I can speak on, there are so many things that we come upon as women, especially, that disempower us, that seek to take our power away, and they craft these stories about like what we should do and should be like, and if we're not like this, then what kind of punishment and consequences we can face, and these go against our truest selves. Like we are wild, and we are connected to the divine through our menstrual cycles, and like we sync up with the moon cycle, and we sync up with each other when when we're together, and that's a phenomenon that doesn't actually happen to men in the same way. And not that men are powerless, of course, but I think that the patriarchal consciousness has been developed for the purpose of like maybe a group of people decided that they felt powerless against women and wanted to project fear into women because they themselves felt powerless and weren't embracing their own truth. And I think that's why BDSM and what we do and holding space is so important, is specifically for men, for like cisgendered men, because we provide a space where they can be truthful for themselves, and they can be that, like, whatever isn't the man mold, whatever falls outside of the man mold.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right about this, patriarchal structure. It's oppressive, and not only to women, but to men. And you see it with the men who come see us in the dungeon, right? There's a reason why they are seeking out, why they have these fantasies that are taboo, because like everything that I think that we fetishize about is really speaking to the cultural norms that's being socialized in us. And like, there's a reason why men have these fantasies of small penis humiliation, of cuckolding, of like all these things. It's actually speaking to the collective unconscious fear that men have, right? And it's being socialized into their mind of like, oh, I should be concerned about my cock size. I should be concerned that my woman is maybe with somebody else, or and BDSM allows for them to get off on this collective fear. And it's a way to integrate this aspect of oneself that you think you're supposed to avoid or run away from. But what BDSM allows us to do is to be able to integrate everything, the good and the bad, the wrong, the crazy, all of that. And
and it allows us to have that safe space where we can like finally explore it. We can finally open that box, that Pandora's box inside of our psyche, and say, what is this about? Because I think that the fear is what contains that box and makes it this kind of like looming scary thing. And like, we've already gotten a couple of questions, which we will address in the Q&A later, but they pertain to strap-on and pegging. Like that is something that so many people, so many like cisgendered hetero men are afraid of, because they think that it's going to make them gay. And it's like the more you think about it, the more that you like are in your head about it, the more fear there will be. And if you just try it, we provide a safe space. We're not going to tell anybody, and we'll do it in a safe way where we won't damage you. And we're not trying to turn you gay, so if you just open yourself up and take that little baby step, literally, you'll see what it's about. You'll get your answers.
And you'll like experience a whole nother level of pleasure that you're like, what the fuck? Why wasn't I doing this sooner?
Right. And pleasure, I believe, is the pathway to healing. Pleasure is like your blanket, like it's where we find where we can find comfort and get to know our bodies and be in our bodies and have our bodies like be happy for us.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so now that you've been a professional dominatrix for quite a while, and you've probably experienced all the different kinds of dynamics and fetishes and all the things that you're able to provide for other people holding this safe space, where do you see yourself, or where are you headed to from here?
I feel like I want to expand, expand outside of the dungeon, but like create a space as safe and intimate as the dungeon. But how do, I think what we do inside the dungeon is so magical, right? It's a space that really is deeply intimate, and there are no rules. There's like anything goes, and you are truly transcending a lot of like things that we have been socialized to think about in dualistic terms. And so I have this strong desire, and I think this is what's been propelling my journey for the past 6-7 years, is how do I create this intimate space outside of my own dungeon? And so I've been working on this website for the past like 5-6 years, and I want to create something that is just as deeply intimate and layered and inviting and womb-like as a dungeon. And it's been this brainchild, soul, passion project of mine, and it has a name.
Okay.
Its name is Pervette.
Okay. And I'm just putting this up on the little scroller banner at the bottom so everybody can see it. It's Pervette, which is the first website. So go on.
Yeah, and it's just been a vision of mine, I think, ever since being outed by my sister and wanting to dispel the misconceptions about sex work and kink and even polyamory. And I started to realize that I'm like, oh, it's all coming together. I have this PhD in education and human development that's specifically about misconceptions and conceptual change. I am living a life that is filled with many misconceptions about the work I do and the relationships I have. And I realize I'm here to dispel these misconceptions, to bring light into these dark taboo topics that we're not talking about openly. And so I was inspired to create Pervette, and it was initially a community blog where doms and subs and others can write in and share their stories about their secrets and their origin stories. Then I just felt, but then I stopped like a year into it and realized I'm like, I really want to get intimate. I really want to go deep and talk about things that are really personal. And I can't do that on a blog roll. And I can't do that on a feed. I can't do this in this format that feels like it's this thing that once read, it's dead and it gets pushed down to the bottom. And so I've been following this vision of creating this whole website from scratch, the one that is totally nonlinear and has lots of layers and levels to it. And the deeper you go through the links that you keep on clicking, the more intimate and intense it gets. And it's a choose your own erotic adventure. And it's one where I could tell my story. But to get to the intimate parts of myself, you really have to dig and go deep. And to get to the intimate parts of yourself, to share yourself there, you have to go deep as well. And so in a way, I was mapping out the architecture of intimacy through the site. And I feel like, I've been working on it for so long, and also wondering why is it taking me forever to fully put this offering this out there? And I realized that as I was working on Pervette, I was working on myself, because the desire, the innermost desire, is to get intimate with myself, with the world. And I don't think I was ever ready to do that until this point, until this year, this moment, this week, this day. and I think working on Pervette was working on myself and finding this voice, this confident, quiet voice that's becoming louder and louder and wants to speak her truth. And and so I wasn't even sure exactly what was going to happen with this incarnation of Pervette. I'm like, all I know is I want to share all of my stories, all of my wisdom and my dreams, and hopefully inspire others to do the same in this space that feels like a safe space to get intimate in.
What
And
does, I'm sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, you're using the word intimacy a lot. And of course, like, um, many people kind of have an understanding, but what does intimacy mean to you?
I think it means being open
Mm-hmm.
and sharing yourself and being vulnerable in
Mm,
that sharing and opening up, and just allowing yourself to stay open, soft and tender and curious. And I think that there's so many ways in which we like shrink away from that
mhm.
because it's too vulnerable, it's too scary, it makes us prone to being judged and rejected. And I think that that was the reason why I was never quite ready to put myself and my stories out there, because I was afraid of getting intimate.
Mhm.
And I feel like I'm finally ready. I've done the work. I'm still doing the work. I'm still on this journey of exploring and examining and expressing my truth. And I feel ready to share everything that I've learned, and to do it in the most fun and interesting, curious way I can. And so Pervette is essentially a rabbit hole that
Mhm.
one can go down. And if you choose to go down this rabbit hole, you're going to get intimate with me and yourself, because I'm going to also probe and prod you and ask you questions and give you challenges and prompts and directives that will hopefully push you to make the more interesting choices in life. And it all starts with your dream. Like I Prevent, like in the beginning, when you go into this space, I'm asking you to share your dream with me.
Mhm.
And I believe that that's the beginning of the journey of one's life, to remember your dream, your innermost desire, your wildest dream, the dream you had when you were masturbating at the age of 3 with your blanket, that dream, right? And to share that, because something happens, something really powerful happens when you share your dream,
Yeah.
when you actually put it into words, because just saying it can make it happen.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think for the longest time, I was afraid to like put out there this, my wild dream is that I want to leave the world better than I found it. I want to change the world
Mhm.
in the best way that I know how.
Yes.
And, and, and so, yeah, there's something really incredible about just the act of sharing your dream. And
Mhm.
once you share your dream with me, then I could start figuring out what that pathway could look like for you. I'm like, oh, okay, if that's your
Mhm.
dream.
Yeah.
And I could prod you into making these interesting choices.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that resonates with me super hard. But it's,
Good.
it's as a person who believes in magic and a practicing witch,
Yeah.
anything that you say and do is essentially casting a spell.
Yes.
And I think that there is, it sounds like there is um, the speaking and the writing, like the abracadabra of like bringing your dreams to life,
Yeah.
and having the courage to own that,
Yeah.
and to be vulnerable, and to not give a shit whether you're going to get judged or not, because that's your own truth, and
Yeah.
nobody can argue with you about your own truth,
Right.
like because we're not talking about anybody else's truth but your own.
Right.
And
Yeah.
to have a space, a virtual space that you're talking about. Are you talking about a virtual space, or a physical space?
It's yeah, it starts out virtually, but this experience that I'm trying to curate is one that also gets really physical.
Mhm.
So like it I feel like I'm creating like an immersive reality game for those who choose to go down this rabbit hole. They can share with me their email, their phone number, their snail mail address, and things get really like this is when the mystery begins. It's like, well, missive gonna come? What's the next message? What's the next imagery? Like, is it through the mail? Is it through my phone? Is it through, and for those who choose to go down this rabbit hole, they'll each have their own private rabbit hole, a page in
Oh.
Pervette that's their own, that they come back to, and then they see, oh my God, she added something new. It's an audio message. Oh, I'm being guided by her voice to do something. Oh, wait, okay, it's a link. They click on it. It's like, I'm telling you my story.
Mhm.
And so these choices that I offer are autobiographical. Like, these are the choices that I made that changed my life.
Mhm.
And so I'm offering you life-changing choices, and I'm sharing with you the story behind these choices, the wisdom behind it, distilled in it, with the hope that it'll inspire you to make these interesting choices, because these choices are all pushing you towards your power and your truth. And that's
Mhm.
how you get to your own unique path of realizing your wildest dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also like just kind of just to like, you know, pan out a little bit. It's really important that we, as individuals, as humans, as sexual beings,
Mhm.
do connect to that part of ourselves, because then you're not sitting there judging everybody else and what they're doing. You know,
Right.
you're focusing on your own stuff. You're building yourself up. You're
Yeah.
enriching your own life. And that's way more exciting and fun and thrilling than sitting there like telling other people what they should and shouldn't be doing with their bodies.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, yeah, I think Pervette kind of came out, this like vision came out from just the where we are in the world right now. I think that we
Mhm.
are all craving connection, community, intimacy. And what we have as our best tools is social media.
Mhm.
But but that's a platform that doesn't actually enable us to speak our fullest, truest selves. Like,
Right.
not on a platform that can, censor us, shadow ban us, delete us for being too sexy
Hmm.
and too honest.
Hmm.
And it's,
Too honest.
yeah. And so I think that for me, it's just, I created something that I deeply want for myself and to see in the world. It's just a space that we can truly, truly connect on what I think really matters the most, and it's our
Mhm.
dreams.
Yeah.
And, as some, you saw that, like, even just in the beginning of our time when we shared our dreams that we had when we were little, it's like, oh, this is why we're connecting. This is why we became Doms. And this is how we're connecting to build something beautiful together.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so, I'm blessed to know you.
Hmm.
And I
So,
love that, you know, that you were really singing the song of leaving the world a better place than when you found it, because that is one of my like all-time lifetime mottos.
yes.
And that is why I'm in this work. You know,
Yeah.
there's so many wounded people out there perpetuating more wounds and pain, causing more trauma, it to the point where it's hereditary. You know, it's like people are passing it down to their children, and whether it's conscious or not, they're doing it.
Right.
And how do we stop that? You know, like I
Mm.
feel like the going to the absolute source of
Mhm.
the problem is where we can actually get somewhere instead of addressing all the symptoms.
Right. Yeah.
Um, the symptoms being, you know, late stage capitalism, exploitation, oppression, the way that the patriarchal consciousness creates a very toxic environment just to be human, and
Yeah.
then everything else that ripples forth from these things.
Yeah.
And I feel like I think that in this moment in time, you know, it's really important to also address um, how we can love ourselves so that we can love other people as well, because it
Mm.
sounds like there's a lot of racism and xenophobia happening
Yeah.
that is obviously like making the news,
Right.
and how, you know, our culture values a certain set of people above others, and
Mhm.
that, you know, really getting to the core of your own dreams and just simply speaking those
Mhm. Yeah.
anywhere in the world, without shame, without fear of judgment, is the kind of world that we want to create. You know, the kind of safe space that we want to create, and we're doing it on a micro level. But I'm hoping that it will keep planting seeds and rippling forth onto a macro
Yes.
level.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like even just us being here doing this interview that's, out there in the world now, and we are embodying this archetype of a woman in power. And as Asian Americans, as daughters of immigrant parents, like this is like, I think that we are making those choices to create that future that we want, to
Mm-hmm.
create a future where there is a new form of power that is so much more beautiful and inviting and soft and magical and feminine. And yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that, as we connect back to like our truth and our dreams, like something that I've learned in my journey of like coming into my truth, coming into my power and realizing my wildest dreams is that, it's when we seek and speak the truth. It's when we become sadists and masochists and work with the tools of truth
Mm-hmm.
to give and receive it. That's how we make our dreams come true.
Mm-hmm.
It's something happens when you embody the truth in all aspects of what you say and do and think. Every part of you becomes true, even your wildest dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so if like, and for me, I think that's what I like, the code or the key that I unlocked. I was like, oh, this is the work to keep
Yeah.
on examining, exploring, and expressing our truth. And
Right.
that's how you make your wildest dreams come true.
Yeah. And there is a lot of gold in your wildest dream,
Yeah.
and you're actually worth making that coming true, as long as you're not hurting anybody else that doesn't want to be hurt. And also being able to provide a safe space for that wildest dream to be spoken, or to be at least written out, is another way that is another thing that we have to do when we tell our stories, when we're sharing our stories, and we're trying to build connections, and by doing that we can dispel shame and
Yeah.
fear of
Yes.
being judged or being isolated. So
Yes.
I think that all of this work is super important, and I want to kind of switch gears a tiny bit
Mhm.
and relate what we're talking about to your current projects.
Mhm.
Of we talked a lot about Pervette, but also your current project of the Renew Powerplay
Mhm.
and the Breakup Bootcamp as well.
Mhm. Yeah. So, um, yeah, I was asked by Amy Chan a couple of years ago to teach a workshop at Renew Breakup Bootcamp, which is this incredible bootcamp that she created for women going through the worst heartaches of their life, heartbreaks. And so I said yes. And at the time I was like, what? I don't, I, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was like, what can I offer? I've just been a dom, like doming people in the dungeon. And that was my first like opportunity to see that everything that I've been learning inside the dungeon is actually applicable to life. And so I've been teaching and leading these workshops of helping women find their power, especially in the moments where they are in this in-between space of not knowing what to do next, how to pick up the pieces. And it's been just incredibly fun and rewarding to bring BDSM into this space and to introduce it in a way that they could connect back into their own lives, because not a lot of the people who attend these boot camps are thinking about kink, and
Mhm.
afterwards they leave realizing, oh wait, this is actually applicable to life. And I kind of, from that experience of being kind of pushed to teach what I've learned, did I kind of arrive at this kind of unifying theory of BDSM and how it's connected to life and love.
Mhm.
And so from there, I've just been coming into this calling of being an educatrix, of teaching men and women how to find their power through this modality of BDSM. And I think that what's so fun is that, you know, I think like kink is so like entertaining and like visually stimulating. I mean, you're like working with tools like, you know, collar and gag. And I think that, you know, I get to unpack what these things are. You know, I think that it makes it very salient when you are being gagged. Are you realizing it's like, and I asked the question, like, how are you not being able to say what you want to say? What's got you on a short leash and collar? What are your golden handcuffs? And then we start to really think about the bondage that we are in, that we've created for ourselves, or society has, or the conditioning that we've been programmed into. And that's the path to finding your freedom and your power. It's when you're able to see the bondage that you're in. And BDSM allows for us to see it so clearly because it's such a highly, densely symbolic practice. And then once you can like point to this symbol and then apply it to your life, you realize, oh, this is the work of what I should be doing. I should be practicing BDSM. I should identify the bondage that I'm in. I should create a disciplined practice to figure my way out of it. I should be practicing being a sadist and masochist and working with the truth. And I should be aware that dominance and submission is at play in all relationships, all connections, all interactions. And when are the moments that we are losing our power? When are the moments when we give away our power?
Yep. I love that. It's literally expanding the BDSM experience, and that's one of our taglines.
Oh,
So
perfect! I love it. I love it's all connected.
It's all. You've just brought it full circle. Let's take a moment to give our audience the opportunity to ask you some questions, if you're open to that.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of questions already, and I kind of mentioned one of them. So let's see, where did it go? Okay. So Slave 000 asks, here is his question. I am so scared being pegged. Can you give any advice?
Oh, wow. Oh, yes.
Well, yes, we can.
Well, I mean, there's so many ways to give this advice on like the technical physical level, and then like on just even the broader level. And I think like, I mean, I just think about like the experience that a woman gets, you know, like the joy of getting fucked is beautiful. It's this joy of like opening yourself up to someone that you love and desire and you want to merge with. And there's something so incredibly pleasurable about opening up to someone, to being vulnerable. And, you know, yes. And like, it's, you know, the practice is really learning how to not contract, to stay open and to be like, yeah, I'm letting you in. I'm letting you penetrate me and fill me. I'm letting you get closer to me in the most vulnerable, deepest way. And so if you can liken being pegged to like falling in love and letting someone in to your life and allowing yourself to truly have that holy fuck, right? The holy fuck experience. And the holy fuck can only come when you're fully open to that, to what wants to show up and be a part of you. And so I would say allow yourself to just be open to that pleasure and know that what's on the other end of this is just like the deepest pleasure that you have never ever experienced until you allow yourself to experience it.
Yes.
It's like, you know, I love the experience of pegging someone because for the first time and the men just like, oh my God, is that what a female full body orgasm is? It's like, why aren't all men doing this? It's just like this thing that you realize, I'm like, oh my God, I wish I did this sooner if I had only known. And that's, you know, it's a good place to be in when you like, you know, face your fear and realize that that if you allowed yourself to just like be open to this, you will experience a whole nother level of pleasure, a whole nother level of intimacy, a whole nother level of like how to receive and how to trust. And I would say, you know, the advice is choose that person very carefully who you want to bring in to you, because that is the energy that is potent. And, you know, and make sure it's someone who knows what they're doing, someone who like is highly empathic and can feel what you feel so that they could ease their way into it. And maybe someone who's very cunning with like teasing you, because, you know, I think that you can't just like go in. It's like you have to be teased to be open to it. And there's something really fun about like getting to the point where you are begging for it. And that's the person you want to invite in and open yourself up to.
I could not have said that better myself. And if you have any fears of like body stuff, body fluids or bodily things, then go ahead and give yourself an enema beforehand.
Oh yeah.
Because that's always a nice thing to do for yourself as well as the other person.
Yes.
And
it's
also, yes. And, you know, like Colette says, find somebody who is empathic and who knows what they're doing, because starting out, you're not going to be able to take like some giant, you know, horse-sized toy. You're going to want to start out relatively small, and make sure that it's, you know, like that you use plenty of lube, that it's not just spit. So that's some more practical stuff that I think is always going to be applicable for getting pet. Let's see, we've got another question. So Robert says, how did you come to choose the moniker / name and title you've chosen as a Dom?
Well, I was always kind of drawn towards the French. Like, I love the name, the sound of Colette, and one of my favorite novelists, Colette, inspired that, and as well as this like this Parisian boutique that used to exist in Paris. There was a store called Colette, and when I was living in Paris, my friends would ask me, like, have you been to Colette? You would love that place. And the way that they said Colette, it just sounded so sexy. And the store was quite incredible. It was a concept store that just had this incredible curation of fashion, art, design, and even water. And they were like just way ahead of their times in inspiring collaborations. They were one of the first. And so, yeah, I think that name just had a lot of positive ties to writing, to literature, and to this special place in Paris that doesn't exist anymore, but had a good long run for like 20 years.
Yeah, I remember Colette.
Yeah.
It was really special, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question from Deepening. Are there session activities, approaches that allow or deepen intimacy? What about intention?
Oh, I think, I mean, all of the practices, I feel like it, but especially the beginning, even before the session, right? The sharing of your desires, the sharing of your dreams and your fantasies, the kinky secret ones that you've had, that's the most intimate thing, to share this part of yourself that you might have been afraid to share with somebody. And I think that's what's so powerful about like the practice of seeking a Dom, that you get to share this part of yourself that you might have been hiding for quite some time. And so I think that just even being completely honest with your innermost desires with someone, sharing your feelings and your boundaries, that's like the beginning of it all.
Yeah.
And then how to deepen that intimacy, it's just, you know, the same as you would with pegging. Keep on staying open, and don't be afraid. Don't contract. Don't close up. Right? Like, just trust that the person that you choose to let in is going to take care of you and give you exactly what you need to get you to the place that you couldn't go to alone. And when you trust and surrender, you will find that bliss that you couldn't do alone. And I think that intimacy is a journey with another, and it's a journey of getting to know yourself deeply through another. And I think that something happens when you're in relationship with someone in the dungeon or in your life. These things come up, your limits, your desires, your subconscious desires, and your insecurities. They all come up, and it's our job to examine them and explore them and express them as they come up, and they will come up in sessions in your life, in your relationships. And so again, just like getting pegged, stay open and don't contract.
I want to also mention that there are different kinds of intimacy. There's physical intimacy, which of course
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are very familiar with, especially that have done real-time sessions. There's emotional intimacy, which is sharing your feelings. There's mental intimacy and sexual intimacy, which, sharing your thoughts, your innermost thoughts. And then sexual intimacy is kind of like a mixture of several of those things,
Yeah.
where you could literally have one kind without the other. And when you are hitting on all levels of intimacy, when you're sharing your fantasies, when you're sharing your feelings about the fantasies, and when you're sharing your physical body and the most intimate parts of your physical body, like, to me, not just the orifices of your body, but also like your face is a very intimate space.
Yeah.
Then you are really connecting, and there is a like a profound alchemy of those different levels of intimacy coming together.
Yeah.
So
I think that that's what's so powerful about BDSM. It hits all of those facets of intimacy, or at least it allows for us to be able to hit all of those facets. And I think that that's why I'm like, it's a very effective form of therapy, because it's the one that's like beyond just the mind of saying, okay, let go. It's like, no, you're going to practice letting go all the ways.
all the different ways.
Yeah.
All right. We've got another question from Bobcat. Do you have any rituals to get ready for a session, and anything you do for personal aftercare afterwards?
Yeah, I think, I have a spiritual practice that I do every morning. And so I guess there's prayer, meditation, lighting these candles. And that actually happens before a session as well. That there's a prayer of like, I really want to go deep and serve as someone's guide into the unknown of this space that we're playing in. And I light candles, and there is this kind of meditation even in getting ready, of like putting on the makeup and getting dressed in the fetish wear and putting on your heels, like the rituals of transformation. And really something happens. I feel like as I allow myself to kind of get ready, I do tune into this energy of who I'm going to see and connect with. And I feel it on this like physical, emotional, psychological level, that I'm like shape shifting to be exactly what they need, so that I could take them to the place that will be, the place that allows for them to realize their desire.
Yeah, I love that. It's like embodying the goddess, preparing the vessel and preparing the temple for their arrival. Like I like to take it to that level a lot of
Yeah.
times, like you take your shoes off, you leave the outside world outside, and you come in and you are completely like new, and you
Yeah.
get into this um, like prone position where it's almost like you're being rebirthed, or
Yeah.
your slate is wiped clean. And
Yeah.
so in preparation for something like that, I also think that ritual is very important, and all the things that you mentioned are very much a part of the dominatrix ritual.
Yeah.
Let's see, we've got a question here that says, you've touched on this a little, but I'm curious to hear more about how you see the kink world and kink culture changing post-COVID.
How I see the kink world, and how it's changing. Well, I just think, yeah, I think the world of kink is one that is expanding into our collective consciousness, right? And everything that we've been practicing in this world is finally finding its way out into like the world, into media, and you're seeing it being played out in like shows and TVs now. It's like now it's finally cool to like to say that you know a dom or be a dom. I remember when I first started in like 2005, it was just like there was still this element of just like this underworldness to it, and that I had to kind of be a little bit more guarded about who I share what I do. And now it's just like it feels so easy to just be like, yeah, I'm a dom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the practices of kink is also permeating our interactions, you know, in light of like the Me Too movement. Like we're finally like seeing the power of consent, of being able to skillfully communicate our desires and our boundaries and our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that in kink culture, this is like the pillar of how we create a safe space to explore and play in. And now I think we're beginning to see the affordances of such like the power of skillful communication, skillful nonviolent communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
To communicate without judgment. And I love that it's, you know, as I'm thinking about it, like, yeah, it's nonviolent communication as we play in a space that involves violence. And I think that there's something really interesting about BDSM in that it incorporates like two things that we're drawn towards, and that kind of has this, oops, sorry about that. Yeah, there are two things that could be seen as like sex and violence, right? It's just something that we're drawn towards, and at the same time we feel like we need to like run away from. And I think that kink kind of merges those two things in a very engaging format.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the world post-COVID is going to just embrace more and more what kink has to offer in terms of its values and practices.
Yes, yes. That's beautifully put. I would also add that the kink world and kink culture, I think post COVID will be a lot more intentional, and that
Yes.
we will seek out the kind, like the quality kind of experiences and partners to play with, instead of kind of like casually just like being kink hungry and going for whoever, you know,
Right.
because there is, you know, there is granted, there are a lot of principles that define kink and BDSM, like consent,
Yeah.
and we should always, you know, express enthusiastic and informed consent when
Yes.
playing, and also be risk aware. But who we play with also should matter. You know, like does this person's vibe align with me? Do their values align with my values? Are they seeking the same kind of things that I'm seeking in this experience of kink? And being more careful, because when you're more intentional with who you're seeking out,
Yeah.
you also want to consider, like, are they going to give me COVID? You know, like, are they
Right.
testing themselves? Are
Yeah.
they careful? Do they actually wear, you know, masks or protective equipment or whatever, you know, when they need to? And do they
Yeah.
respect other people enough to do that? Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that that's another kind of like post-COVID.
That's so true. Yeah, there's more intentionality of who we choose to be with, right?
Yeah.
And really trusting our intuition of who we choose to let into our personal spaces. And that requires that kind of communication of being like completely honest about where we've been, what we know, and and where we want to be.
Speaking of COVID, we're going to do two more questions. So SH asks, might you both like to discuss the pros and cons you've experienced of wearing or not wearing a mask in public, profile, so new DOMs might better inform their decisions about it.
Mm-hmm.
In public profile, what do
Are you talking
you?
about like veils? Probably.
I think he means. Yeah, I'm not sure if he means or they mean masks to conceal their identity or masks as like COVID masks. So SH, if you could clarify that for us, we're just going to move on to the next question until you do. Let's see, Natalia's channel asks a good question above. Also, what would you say to people who've had negative experiences in BDSM and may be afraid to explore further?
I would say, just learn from that experience of why it was negative, and don't let that negative experience close you from a potential positive experience. It's like having a relationship that was bad or a breakup that was bad. It's like, don't let that bad breakup or relationship stop you from having another relationship because it hurts your heart, or that you don't want to let someone in because you're going to get hurt again. Just, if you can, explore like why was that a negative experience? Did you choose someone that you realized you couldn't trust? Did you realize that you didn't express your boundaries as clearly as you could have? Did you realize that you didn't know how to express how you felt in that moment? What made it bad? I would suggest to really examine why that was a negative experience, and allow yourself to learn from that experience, allow it to change yourself, and then to bring that new knowledge and practice into your next experience. And maybe it's one where you choose very carefully who you want to play with, and you express very skillfully what it is that you want to explore and what your boundaries are. And
those are all really important pieces of information to consider during the negotiation process. And communicating more, maybe too much, is always better than not enough. And also learning about yourself through these experiences, not just blaming the other person or putting it on the other person to know everything. Know that the other person isn't going to be able to read your mind, and that, it's possible that maybe they were not in the right headspace. And so consider all these possibilities that could attribute to a negative experience, and try to clarify, as much as you can for yourself, what may have caused that, and move on to the next one. Don't just like write off BDSM altogether, because you would be closing a very important door. So just to get back to SH's question, they are referring to your veil, and more so, and not so much a COVID mask. And how did you arrive at the decisions, and what are the pros and cons?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because it's what every dom or sex worker has to contemplate and think about as they put themselves out there in the world. And I mean, I think for me, I just followed my intuition of like, when I love knowing that whoever knows me and sees my face, we have met in person. And there's something really, for me, just reassuring to know that I know you as much as you know me. Like, I want to share a lot of things, but at the same time, I think I want to have both, like, that privacy and that publicness at the same time. And I think the veil allows me to do that, to play in both spaces, where I can share with you my sex life and everything. And at the same time, you may not be able to spot me on the street if you see me. And I like that. And I think for me, it's a future proof of like, I don't know exactly where this is going to end up. I don't know how this is going to be out there. And I love knowing that I have I have this bit of power over what it is that I want to reveal. And I think for me, it's also deeply symbolic, the veil. And like to see someone in veil, it's like everything else in kink, right? It's like the deep symbolism. And I believe that like what I'm here to do is to help lift that veil for myself and for those around me and the world around me. And to see someone in veil, you realize, oh wait, we have a choice to see this world through a veil. We have this choice to lift our own veils and to see more clearly the truth that's in us and around us. And I love the idea that, you know, if you go down this rabbit hole, I will lift the veil. You will see me and I will see you. And, you know, if we go deeper, there will be a point where we'll meet face to face and you and I will connect. And I will choose very carefully who I want to let in and see me.
I love the mystery that the veil provides and provokes, you know, and also kind of like even going back to your very first fantasy is the mystery, like the mysterious woman who people are just magnetically drawn to because she has this power about her, and she's the one that gets to control whether you see her face or not you, you know.
Right.
And that to me is like it is very symbolic, but it's also a very literal expression of control. Like you don't get to see my face until I decide you get to see my face.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I show my face because you know, not that anybody who doesn't feels that they have something to hide, but I don't have anything to hide. I am out to my family about what I do. I haven't always been, but I decided that I was going to take that power and use it as mine. You know, like I will tell my mom, I will tell my family what I do when I'm ready to. And I think that my face conveys like a youthfulness and a joy and a playfulness about me as a person. You know, like I don't want to just be known for my tattoos or my haircut. I also want to be a face, and I want to be an Asian American face without having to say I'm Asian American. I want to be a person who can also kind of shapeshift, but you'll always be able to see my face, you know, knowing that whatever shape I take, it's still going to be me in the core. So I don't have any sort of judgment about people that that don't show their face. I think that it's, you know, it's one of the spaces and one of the industries in this huge world where we can wear a mask and still get like all different kinds of interests, you know. And we can choose to also not wear a mask. And I think that the variety is also what's interesting about this industry. And so yeah, there's pros and cons of everything. I don't know that there are any. I haven't experienced any cons. Maybe that's just because I'm not paying attention, or I have yet to. So thanks for asking. And so we've talked a lot about like your projects and any and given a lot of advice. Are there any parting words that you would like to give our audience, Colette?
Parting words. Yeah, I think that if we think about like what it is that you and I love to do and this work of like BDSM, I think the thing I would probably share is that, yeah, we should all be practicing BDSM. We should all be remembering that the point is to play, and that the point really for us is to remember our dreams, to follow our dreams, to not be afraid of finding that path to it, because it's the most challenging path to realize your dreams. It's pushing you to face everything that you might be afraid of. And so, yeah, if you can, just remember to play and be and to have fun. Um, and yeah, that's it.
Play and have fun. It's very
Yeah.
important.
Follow your dreams. Yeah.
Follow your dreams. Focus on the things that you can do to make those dreams come true. Like first by speaking them, and then and also writing them down, or vice versa, because the world needs you to be truthful and authentic. The world does not need your judgment. The world does not need you to hide, and the world does not need you to keep fearing.
Yeah. It's all about showing up and playing.
Yay. All right, so we have spent a lot of time with Colette, and we're gonna sign off. I have put up the banner for anybody that wants to support the weekly broadcasts that we do, the time and energy that it takes for us to pull it all together. Patreon.com/La Maison de Rouge is how you can find out more about it, and we've already got some lovely patrons here that do subscribe to our Patreon. So thank you guys. Thank you, David. And we appreciate you showing up and asking such thoughtful questions, and always helping us to demystify and share stories about BDSM and kink and sexuality. So until next Monday, I hope all of you stay kinky and safe, and we will sign off now.
Bye.
Bye.